So, JP, you're just coming off of ending 2 weeks off, and
Mhm.
I am ending 1 week off. How has this last couple weeks been for you?
Well, it's nice to have been able to take a step back a little bit for sure. We always talk about the busyness of life. This is not a new conversation for us, but just to be able to have some time, it's great. We're going to be doing the interview with Elliott and with Will soon, and to see a father and son get to talk about their relationship together. The grace of the last week for me has just been able to be, the time I've been able to spend with my daughters. I don't always get that when things are incredibly busy. So to be able to spend so much time with them in the last 14 days or so, it's been such a nice experience, and it's hard to work and be a parent. We talk about that all the time as well, but really it was just such an enjoyable experience to see both of them and get to just talk to them in a relaxed setting where you're not constantly rushing to the next part of your daily routine. Just to have some time to be present for them, and whatever it is that they wanted to do was a really nice thing for me. How about you? What was the last week like for you?
Yeah, it was interesting. It was the first time since my kids have been in school that we did not have the same spring break.
Hmm.
And I didn't realize it until, a week before. And I was like, oh, I guess a last minute vacation is not in the cards for us right now. Uh, And my husband joked because yesterday I texted him. I was like, "Oh, I miss my family." And he goes, "You don't say that when you have them like all summer long, and you're like, okay, it's time to go back to school." But I realized that if they were home, I would have done a lot more relaxing, enjoyable things. But because they weren't, I was organizing closets and doing things that needed to be done around the house and needed to be done for work. And so I had to remind myself several times this week to take a pause, take a breath. Not everything has to be accomplished in a break
Yeah,
because you
for
have the
sure.
time, right?
That
And
was good.
that's a hard thing to remember.
Agreed. You got to take the time, right? Or else, like you said, we know what a school year is like. So to be able to take any time to breathe for a second is a good one. The first week we had that, so both kids were off with us and spent a lot of time with them just at home. So that was still pretty busy, just having them home all the time. This week they were both in school, but the second day of the week, so Tuesday, I actually got to go and spend the day at my daughter's preschool. So I actually had a day in the classroom with a group of 24 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, and got to see what that was like. So that was a bit of an experience for me. I
Any
think
change
I
in
would rather.
vocation?
No, definitely not. Although I will say, I thought the 3-year-olds were far better behaved than the 16 and 17-year-old kids that I have to deal with on a daily basis. But it was so nice actually to see that, like, the innocence of a small child and how they're just excited about doing anything. And we sometimes get to the point when we're in high schools where they're at that age where nothing makes them feel enthusiastic. So to see that and spend some time doing that as a reminder of, first of all, like I said, the innocence of small children, but also the people who work with them on a daily basis, like the people who dedicate their lives to working in early
Mm.
childhood education with 3 and 4-year-olds. God bless those people who do what they do. I don't know how they find the energy to do that on a daily basis. And it was just great. It was, like I said, it was great to spend time with my daughter and see what she does on a daily basis. It was such an enjoyable thing. But like you said, got to find some time to take a step back also in these experiences, and having the opportunity to do both was great. Was great this week.
Yeah, I felt myself wrestling between needing to stay engaged in the world and what's going on in the world, and needing to take a step back from being engaged in the world. Like, what part of me needed to rest and take care of myself mentally, physically, etc., in order to then re engage in the world. Because it's been, I mean, you're working in Montreal, Canada, and I am in Dallas, Texas. We know things are challenging for us right now. And so to be able to take a break from all of that and see again, like how I can re-engage in the stuff that brings me light and hope, and also in ways in which my talents and skills can be used for good. You kind of get overwhelmed and you want to fix all the problems or avoid all the problems. So taking this break gives you that kind of balanced look at everything.
Yeah, I agree. And as you said, it is a crazy time in the world right now, especially when you compare the two countries, and the relationship between the United States and Canada the last couple of weeks has been a challenge. But yeah, sometimes you got to block out some of that noise. And I think being on break at this point in some ways was a good thing, because there is some chaos and some anger and frustration, I think, in both countries. It's not just Canada obviously experiencing the frustration of what's been going on, but everybody's feeling some of that at the moment. So to be able to have some time to reflect, remember the good things that you do have in your life, I think is an important one, and the timing's been good for that.
Yeah. And Lent started between the last time we spoke and
Yep.
now. I don't know, since we've been on break during this first part of the Lenten season, I don't know how that's been for you, but how are you engaging with Lent this year? What does it mean for
We
you?
talked about this last time a little bit. For me, the thing I try to focus on during Lent is just the concept of sacrifice in general. What is it that I'm willing to give up in order to do the things that are the right things? And I think it's been good. This change of pace has been good. It's been nice to put aside. Like I said, one of the things I've made a conscious effort of doing the last 2 weeks is sacrificing maybe some of the career driven things, to put that aside for the moment and focus on the people in my life that I don't always get time to be with. That for me is an important Lenten reflection. It was nice to be able to make a sacrifice for something that I do not sacrifice very often. Not that it's a bad thing, but it does sometimes take away from important relationships and presence that you want to have to certain people. So for me, that's where the Lenten reflections have kind of gone. The sacrifice of certain things, whether they're not necessarily that they're bad, but just making sure that you can put aside some of those things that are just maybe distracting at time, and making sure that there's enough positive energy and investment in other things as well. How about you? What's it been like for you the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, one thing I find beneficial is that I signed up for this BC Crossroads class that is engaging with the readings every week and discussion boards. And it's not like a huge commitment in terms of time, but just being able to like engage with the readings and engage with other people all over the world that take this class and kind of hear their perspectives has reminded me again to engage with scripture during this time.
I'm really looking forward to the conversation we're going to have now with Will and with Elliott. Both of us have worked with Elliott a lot in the last couple of years, and he's such a great, he's a fountain of knowledge. He just has so much to share. His experience in ministry is something that's hard. It's hard to find someone who has that type of experience in ministry at this point. But he's so willing to share. And the thing I love about Elliott most is you never get any sense of negativity from him at all, ever. It's just always positive, always finding the good in the moments that he's in. I always have time for that. When you get a chance to speak to Elliott, you finish that conversation feeling better about things, just because he brings such an incredibly positive spirit to any meeting and any conversation. So to be able to spend time with him, great. And the fact that we get to spend time with Will, who we don't know, and see what it's like to be Elliott's son a little bit, is a great experience. I'm really looking forward to it.
One thing I've really loved working, because he and I are both on a mission formation advisory committee for the JSN, and working with him, it's always like he always says yes. Like, even if it seems like he has no time or space left, but somebody is inviting him to something that's worthwhile, he
Yeah.
says yes, and he does it. And he not just does it. He does it with joy and excitement, which is truly phenomenal. Like, he is someone that shows me God will create the time and space if you are willing to say that yes. And then I've only heard about Will from Elliott and also read his articles in America Magazine the last time when he was interning, and a few things that he published. And so it was really going to be exciting to talk to Will directly and see what that father-son relationship is like in practice in high school as well as beyond.
Yeah, well, honestly, one of the kindest people I think you'll ever find in the network. So to be able to spend time with Elliott and Will is great. And let's get into it. Let's get to that interview with them.
Awesome. So here is Elliott and Will. Elliott and Will, thank you so much for joining us today on the Living Ad Maiorem podcast. We are so glad that you are here. Thank you for taking time out of your Friday to be with us.
Absolutely.
No problem.
JP and I are not only excited to talk to each of you about your experience being both an educator and an alum of Fairfield Prep, but also to talk to you about what it means to have Ignatian education be a part of your family, to, have that be something that is both at home and in school, and what it means to be formed as in Ignatian spirituality as a father and son specifically. So let's dive in first, just to start our conversation so our listeners can get to know you. I mean, I introduced both of you before we signed on, but Elliott, can you tell us how you came to Ignatian education and then what it meant to share that love of Ignatian education with your kids?
Sure. Thanks. Thanks to you, Gretchen and JP, for giving Will and I an opportunity to spend a little bit of time with all of you today, and then to share this out to the wider network and a wider audience. But for me, I came to Jesuit education when I went to college. So I was first introduced to the Jesuits at Fordham University. I graduated from Iona Prep. It's an Irish Christian Brothers school in New Rochelle, New York. During my freshman year at Iona, my dad passed away. So passed away of cancer. That was really, I think, if we want to call it the cannonball moment of my life, where the trajectory of my life, as I look back on it now, changed. And I ended up, when I was deciding on where to go to college, I wanted to be close to my mom. And so we lived in Yonkers, New York. And so it came down to Fordham, Iona, and really Fairfield U was another one that was, again, another Jesuit school. But in the end, Fordham won out. I had several relatives that went to Fordham. So I knew Fordham, and sort of the rest, as I entered Fordham, they say the Jesuits ruin you for life, and that's kind of what happened. I got involved. It was always a retreat. I was a retreat leader in high school. I was involved in liturgy in high school, but when I got to Fordham, I really got involved in campus ministry, during my sophomore year, especially, and then going forward, junior and senior year, led a number of retreats, got involved in spiritual direction, got to know a lot of Jesuits on campus, and just fell in love with what the Jesuits were offering, and the education of the whole person. So it wasn't just about my intellect, but about how I was nurturing my spirit, how I was nurturing my body, so the whole person. So I just really fell in love with that idea. And I was a political science major, and I was prepping for the LSATs. But my spiritual director, and this is as a spiritual director now, I know that you're supposed to notice things and do deep listening. And he just kept telling me, I'm not here in law school and anything that you're sharing. So I'm like, no, law school, this is, I'm going to do pro bono work. It's not going to be like corporate. I'm not thinking corporate here, but law school on the brain. And But he kept saying, God's not saying that. That's not what I'm hearing. And
You're way too nice to be a lawyer, anyways, Elliot.
yeah, thanks, JP. I
Way too
appreciate
kind
that.
to be moving into that.
Maybe, I don't know. Will might have some other comments about how nice I am.
Yeah, we'll get to that. Don't you worry. We'll make sure we have to talk about it.
But no, it was, and then I had this chance encounter. I was in the Lombardi Center gym at Fordham University, and I was returning, I think, a basketball, and I run into a Jesuit who I know, but actually I knew him when he was a layperson at Iona. He taught religious studies at Iona as a layperson, and then I see him, and I'm like, what is he, like, Rocco Danzi, what are you doing here? And Rocco was doing his Regency work in Brooklyn and was at Chiswick Hall visiting some of his class, or visiting some Jesuit friends. And he's like, oh, I'm working at this Jesuit parish in Brooklyn in Crown Heights. And I'm like, Crown Heights? I'm like, the riots were just there a few years before that. There was, did not have the best of reputations. He goes, oh, you should come down. You should come down and visit me. And I'm like, yeah, right. And then he called me the next day, and he was like, no, I'm really, really serious. I'm serious. You should come down and visit me. And I did. I ended up spending the next 2+ years of my life there after that one encounter. And talk about a God incident or a God moment, and that's what happened. And I never went to law school. I went back for my theology degree at Fordham, met my wife on the first day I went back to Fordham, or my now wife, Maura. And I've been in ministry ever since 95. So it's now 30 years later, and I've never left it. So it's, again, amazing how God works in your life if you are open to it. And then my wife was a guidance counselor at Loyola School in Manhattan. She got her master's degree in counseling. And so, and I proposed to Maura on campus at Fordham. So at the base of Keating Steps, that's where I proposed, because that's where we met. We felt like that was like the perfect spot I thought it was the perfect spot to get engaged at. So given that that's where we met, and Fordham brought us together. So, and then to be able to have my sons go to prep, since I've been at prep now 20 years, this is my 20th year, to have them get a taste of what Jesuit education is all about for them. And again, prayer, spirituality, faith life has been, a key part of our family forever. So, and it's what kind of keeps us together. So that's kind of, just how I got involved, and, certainly blessed every day to be doing this work.
Going off of that, Will, can you tell us what your Jesuit education meant to you, or what even having that be a part of your family meant to you?
Yeah, totally. So I guess my dad really started working at Fairfield Prep pretty soon after I was born. So the Jesuits.
Yeah, you were two. You were just two. You were just 2+ a couple of months. Yeah.
So I basically, since I've been cognizant of myself, the Jesuits have been pretty present throughout my life. And I think growing up, we would go to family mass at Fairfield Prep, or go to a variety of events at Fairfield Prep, sort of get to know the Jesuits there. When my dad joined, Michael Boughton, who I believe is he at BC still?
Michael he's actually at Gloucester. He's at a retreat house now. Yeah.
He's at a retreat house now, but he was the president of Fairfield Prep, or president at the time.
Yeah, when I started. Yeah, he was on me.
It was just like such a kind presence even as a kid, so I sort of had that impression of, oh, this is what a Jesuit priest looks like, and this is how he performs ministry and whatnot. And then, when it became time for high school, I had some reservations. I was nervous going in, but sort of my dad was very reassuring. And I think those those positive memories of being at Fairfield Prep as a kid really were a foundation for oh, this place does great work. This place is like a familial ministry, and it really kind of ropes you in a little bit. And when the Jesuits kind of get their claws around you, so to speak, positive claws, I promise. They kind of keep you inside their network. So went to Fairfield Prep for 4 years. I because of my dad, but also because of the friends I made, I sort of joined campus ministry and stayed in it. I served at every single mass that I could have during my 4 years at prep. Even during COVID, I was reading or recording, singing online. I was on the retreat team. My senior year, I actually led I think four different retreats actually.
Yeah.
There was a past due freshman retreat that I led because of COVID, and then a new class of freshman retreat, and then a movie retreat and a Kairos. So I sort of got this whole package Jesuit experience very quickly over I would say 3.5 years because of COVID. And then when it came time for looking at colleges, when I ended up whittling it down to it, I ended up with three Jesuit schools as my top three. So it was always going to be the Jesuits for college too. And I think like as time went on, Fordham just sort of emerged as this best choice because of the family connection, because my godfather was right on campus in Fordham Prep. It just sort of felt serendipitous, and I really wanted to work with media stuff. I'd sort of found a love for that through high school as well, and the Jesuits had really fostered that love as well. And it just felt kind of serendipitous that the school's in the city, and you kind of get that experience of like being in one of these media hubs, and then also kind of getting that Jesuit foundation underneath it. Felt like a no-brainer, and then of course the legacy of our family too. And going to Fordham, I feel like I've really followed in my dad's footsteps. I went on a retreat my freshman year, joined the retreat team my sophomore year, became a campus ministry intern my sophomore year, been involved with their volunteer programs at Fordham. And now this year I got, I guess you could call it a promotion. I applied and I got the position of the retreat intern, so now I'm organizing the retreats at Fordham. Then obviously in the background of that, I started doing work with America Media last summer. So sort of have really embraced the Jesuits and really embraced sort of their teachings and their whole mantras and whatnot. And I really think that's because like 7 years ago or 8 years ago now, when I was like having these reservations about Fairfield Prep, I was still remembering all that time from before, but also seeing the way in which it sort of had molded and shaped my dad and set him on this great path and to a path of things that he's loving to do. And I think that was really instrumental in me saying yes to Fairfield Prep, me saying yes to doing the retreat team at Prep, doing service events at Prep, being a minister at Prep, and then eventually making the choice to go to Fordham, making the choice to get involved with campus ministry at Fordham as well.
Yeah, I find it interesting because my kids are too young to be in high school right now, but they're getting closer to that time. And I have a lot of colleagues who have had their kids at Jesuit alongside of them working there. And it's always an interesting dynamic. How did it feel, Will, to be like so involved in the things that your dad was doing, but also to be like with your dad all day and all night? Like, I don't know how that works. I'm asking for my future,
Totally. Well, A, I think my dad and I work well together, and B, I think my dad really has this role of nurturing the leaders and the ministers at Prep, where he wants to hear our ideas and he wants to shape events and programming in the manner in which we're feeling about them. So even on retreats that have a little more structure, like Kairos, working with my dad, he was never, unless it was like logistically impossible, he was never about like saying like, no, we can't do this. He was always trying to find a compromise to get our ideas to work, or restructuring parts of whatever we're doing to get our ideas to work. So I never felt like I was really clashing with him. And then ultimately, in terms of like the amount of time we were spending together, I also was really involved in like the theater and the choir at Fairfield Prep, and I did a lot of stuff with like our arts and whatnot. So I didn't necessarily feel like I was seeing him like all day, every day, because even if we were working together in campus ministry, I was also spending time in kind of a completely different world, working with the arts programs and stuff like that. So I feel like splitting those two periods of time was really conducive to us, working better together, because we weren't spending every waking second together either. And my dad also, I think, realized that this was sort of my 4 years in high school, so kindly also stepped back here and there from different programs. Like when I went on my first Kairos, my dad kind of stepped back. It was one that he would normally direct, be like the retreat director for, but he kindly stepped back, so I would sort of be able to share openly, and about, if there's something going on with our family or if there was something going on with our relationship. I was able to share that experience and sort of not feel hindered or feel embarrassed or anything like that. And he did that a few times throughout high school, where I'd go on a retreat or be going on a volunteer program or something like that. And truly, the moments where we did overlap, I feel like really only served to make our relationship better. I don't think that they were ever a drawback. Yeah, I guess it's a combination of things, but I think him stepping back, him being willing to compromise and hear out the student leaders' ideas, not just mine, but everyone on teams that I was on, and then also just the fact that it is so great to have those moments, and those are special moments to get to work together. I really think was sort of made our relationship stronger. And just I don't know, like I can't remember. I'm scratching my brain. I wish I had some gossip or like some story about us like clashing throughout high
Well,
school, but I
I
really
will
don't
say
know.
this. His
Oh,
senior-
Elliott has one.
I got
Oh,
one.
boy.
I got one.
Oh,
It
God.
wasn't clashing, but I got to bring this up because we actually still laugh about it here. Like some of the like the principal Tim D and a few others, we laugh about it. His senior year. So again, we're just coming back from like being like set, like the last quarter of his senior year is when we fully brought everybody back.
Mhm.
So we get back, and you're not supposed to leave campus for any reason whatsoever. And do you remember this, Will?
Yeah, I remember it.
So he gets caught leaving campus with some friends of his, and the friends he gets caught with, none of these kids have ever had like jug or anything. He gets caught coming back onto campus because the guard at the front gate, so we're on Fairfield U's campus, he comes out and he gets caught for jug. And so he gets 3 days of jug or whatever it is. And he comes in and he's so upset. He goes, this is going to ruin my reputation. And everybody, like the dean of students, everybody was like, I felt so bad. I had a jug Will, or, like they just even felt bad and then he was just like mortified, and he was just like, but he was like really, really upset. And that was the only time he ever got jug.
Let me also just point out some details that you didn't say. The three other guys I got caught with were all also like retreat participants and leaders. It was also my 18th birthday, and the only I never, like, this is so like there's no reason for me to lie about this now. I never went off campus before or after that, and the only day that they ever took IDs, and they took IDs and then announced it over the loudspeaker. The only day they ever did that was on my birthday. So they somehow Fairfield Prep decided the best time to take this away would be on the day of my 21st birthday.
You're
So,
18. Yeah.
Yeah, my 18th birthday. It was,
It's always so
make it.
we get some of that. So well, just so you know, I do a lot of the mission formation work at Loyola High School here in Montreal, but I'm also the dean of students here at the same time. So we have all kinds of stories like this. We had a similar one this year where one of my colleagues, his son, him and his friends were out at lunch, and then he purposely locked all the doors they were trying to get back into when he came into the building, so that the three other guys were stuck outside the building when they were coming back in. So I had to go see him. This colleague is a teacher of mine. I've known him for years. He's like, just absolutely hammer my son for every single kid that he forced to be late. Make him serve a day of jug for each one of them that he locked outside of the building. So it's always great. I actually think the idea of having the father and son, or whether it's any type of parent and their child in the school, is such a great thing. It creates some of those moments that will be funny long term in your life, right? Yeah, sure.
Wasn't funny in the moment. He didn't think it was
maybe
gonna
not
be
so
funny
funny in that moment. But after that, it's great. Something you can talk about forever.
Yeah. And then I had the pleasure of having our youngest come right behind him. So, and they had overlapped 1 year, so senior and freshman year, which Will really loved. He loved having his little brother there. So,
Will, did you ever find it difficult with like your peers? Did it ever have an impact on you with peers, knowing that you had a parent in school? Like there must have been some challenges there to some extent. Like there's always that worry of, hey, what's this person going to hear or say that will get back to a parent that works at the school? Did that ever happen?
I think freshman year, yes, but I think by the time I was a senior, like people knew me.
Yeah.
Um, I was never like really involved in like any of the like partying or anything like that. Like just not the circles I ran in with like the retreats and campus ministry stuff, and
Yeah.
then the like theater and art stuff. Like that just was not the sort of world that I was in. So I guess it didn't come up a ton, and I think people were probably weary of me as a freshman, but by the
Yeah.
time I was a senior, I think I had a reputation enough of like not being that person, and then um like people must not have thought that I was like a snitch or anything because like I like as high schoolers do, I feel like I got sort of on the bad like me and some kids were just on the outs by the time that our time at prep ended, and
Mhm.
they still decided to come on retreats and lead them, and were still involved with stuff that my dad was actively leading. So I think at the very least, even if we were beefing, they never thought that I was like besmirching
Yeah. Yeah.
their image to my dad or anything like
Sure.
that. And I think sort of situations like that probably showed that I was all right. But freshman year, definitely there was like a week or two right at the start of my time at prep. I probably more like a month where I like sort of definitely struggled to find people because I think people were weary to trust me
Yeah.
and whatnot. But you know, you got to just keep pushing and find your people. And I think getting involved with different things really helps. Like the minute that you're on a retreat and not getting sleep for 2 nights with a group of kids, you kind of get to know them and they get to know you. It worked out, you know. So it was tough at the beginning, but I think as long as you build a reputation of trust, and I spent time with my dad, but I was also, you know, willing to not like have lunch in his office every day or
Yeah.
things like that to just sort of
Sure.
give myself some breathing room too.
Was there anything at Fairfield, like if you had to pick a moment at Fairfield for you that was probably the most formative, was there something specifically?
Ooh. So I'll give you two answers. So one formative that sort of I feel like was at the tail beginning, and then formative to where I am now. I think those are my two answers. I think formative at the beginning, unfortunately, is not a campus ministry moment. I think that the biggest formative moment when I first got to prep is I was trying to figure out what to do with myself because my parents were very adamant. We at prep, I'm sure you guys have similar, some sort of similar mantra, but we have like this mantra of like not being a 2:30 kid because our school gets out at
Mm.
2:30, and like
Yeah.
some people just go straight home right after. So
Yeah.
like there's the mantra of like not being the 2:30 kid and staying late at prep and doing something after school. And I was trying to figure out what that program or passion would end up being. I thought about joining cross country. I thought about, you know, doing a variety of clubs. And this guy who I was friends with at the time, and unfortunately have sort of fell off with in the years since, sort of convinced me to sign up and do theater. And at the time, I was very timid and very sort of reserved. And you know, I'd done some like random theater stuff throughout middle school and done some art stuff throughout middle school, but I really hadn't taken that leap, so I decided to do theater. And the first show was like kind of horrible. Like I was really nervous and whatnot, but I guess similar to like a retreat environment or a service environment or something, like we sort of all bonded through the experience, and even though I didn't have the most awesome time, I kept pushing through theater, and it really kind of developed into this passion for entertainment and wanting to work in film and television and stuff like that. So I think that was a really formative moment. Like for my time at prep, it really set me on the path to finding my friends and finding my community there. And then I think the moment that really sticks with me and I reflect the most on was the final Kairos that I led my senior year. So me and my best friend were the rector and the assistant rector. He was the rector, I was the assistant rector for this Kairos retreat, and we actually came back after we graduated to lead this to make sure that some juniors got to go on the retreat, so the legacy of it would continue on past it. And that was the first retreat, or one of the first retreats I had actually been on with my dad. My dad was actually the retreat director for that one. So I think the combination of like sort of getting that last experience, not only with my best friend, but also with my dad, was just like so incredible. And I really just remember I think we were at Wisdom House, right? That was the retreat center, Dan.
We had done, just to give a little context for this too, was it was again just coming back from COVID. We had done a one. We did one in the spring, but it was like a truncated one, only 2 nights, 3 days instead of 3 nights, 4 days. And so, and that was only seniors. We wanted to give that senior group a chance to go
Sure.
before graduation. And then we decided to do a summer Kairos to have at least a pool of students to draw from for leadership the next year. So this was about 2 weeks after graduation. So we were 2 weeks clear, and I was able to get, Will and a bunch of his classmates, 6 of them, to come back and lead it, which was just a testament to them, to that group. But I think it also spoke to how important this retreat was to them. So
Yeah, I mean, I just to echo what my dad said. I think it was just like getting to go back and lead when we were so unsure that that was going to happen because of COVID. But then also being there with people that I cared about so much, and a lot of my like the lady who directs theater at Prep was there, so someone who I knew really well. One of my teachers that I had had for 3 years was my direct leader. Like it was just such a powerful group of people that I was close with at Prep, and just all happened to be on this retreat together. Like I think every single leader, faculty leader, was someone that I had had in class or experienced at some time at Prep. So it was just like that was really powerful for me. And I just like really vividly remember it's got to be a profound spiritual experience for me now at this point, because like I can still so vividly remember my best friend Matt, giving the Live the Fourth talk on the last day, and it was just this like gorgeous summer day. We're sitting in this chapel, you got sun like piercing in through all these lights, and just like the leader team just kind of like breaking down. And like I didn't really get upset during graduation, but for some reason, like in that moment, it was just sort of like this release and this like breath of fresh air, and it was just this like beautiful moment in the summer. And I just like it like sticks with me because it kind of just felt like it was like what you're going into next is going to be a change, but it's going to be okay, and you're going to have foundations to carry you. And I think that moment, it's maybe less tangibly formative than the moment of me deciding to join theater or whatever, but I really like that's a moment that just like is vividly in my brain, and it's in my brain consistently, to the point where I led my last Emmaus retreat at Fordham like 2 weeks ago. My talk was about that moment, and because of just how vivid it was. So yeah, those are my formative moments. Sorry, that was a long-winded way of getting there.
No, that's
Like,
good.
No, that's
I think
great.
that's good.
I love that your first moment was finding your own place at a place where your family was, right? And where your dad had already had some years, a place you were already familiar with, right? You were able to find out where you were supposed to be, and that your last opportunity was that coming together. Elliott, I wonder if you can talk a little bit about kind of the same questions we asked Will, the challenges and blessings of having your sons at your school.
yeah,
I'm sure it involved both for you along the way.
yeah. I mean, and certainly, I, again, we didn't force either of our sons, either Will or Nick, to go to prep. It wasn't necessarily. I mean, we were hoping. We thought it would be the best education for them. But knowing that they were, eventually. I mean, when Will decided he was going, great, and then Nick deciding. But even in the lead up to that, I had talked to other colleagues who had sons here, or had worked here and then had their sons come here, and they just kind of said to me I was going to probably have a little bit of an easier time, just because I wasn't a full-time faculty member. I wasn't determining grades of their friends, so like they weren't necessarily
well, you
going
did
to hear it
teach
from
some of
their
my
friends.
friends. You
What?
did end up. You did end up
Oh yeah, I
teaching some
did
of my
end up
friends.
senior year. Ended up I you know again, director of campus ministry. What subject matter do you think I would be teaching?
I don't
But
know. I
something-
taught math, so I don't know.
Right. But what do you think? What do you think? So you would have maybe people would have just presumed if they didn't know anything about me
Theology.
would be theology, right? But it was no, it was political science. They brought back my Fordham degree. That was it was so funny. Tommy De Casada, who was the principal, and Tim D, who's now our principal, but was the academic dean at the time. They said, "Oh, would you be willing to teach a class next year?" And this was the hybrid year, and they were short one teacher, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm happy to teach theology. Let me know. I've taught all the." So they were like, well, we're not really thinking of theology. What do you think about using your poli-sci degree to teach American government and politics to seniors? So that's what I ended up teaching for 2 years, actually. Again, for most of his time here, I wasn't, determining grades for friends or anything like that. So there was that piece of it. But as Will mentioned, I really tried to let them find their own way. I really did not want to be so forceful or influential that they were going down that path. If they found campus ministry, if they wanted to be involved in campus ministry, great, and I would welcome it. And both of them thrived. They both, led multiple retreats. It gave them both confidence. So, having to prepare a retreat talk or serving at Mass, singing at Mass, both of them cantored. In the choir at Mass, so I mean, all that builds up self-confidence and builds up, so to me, and those were just very proud moments for me, like really looking at my two sons here who really found their own way here. And I really tried to allow them to do that. It was challenging, I think, too, when, they didn't always get along with teachers. They're colleagues of mine, some cases very good friends, people who I'm very close with. And it would be hard to hear, and they may not have shared all of that with me. So that may have been a challenge for them too. But for the most part, I didn't find a whole lot of challenges with them being here. And I tried to support them in everything that they did. So I would go to, I don't know, Will, when you were in your plays, I'd go and sit in and watch all the dress rehearsals, and I'd go to each night of the show, and it was a running joke like, "Oh, how many times have you seen the play, Elliott?" Or "How many times have you seen the musical?" Or like it's just so I said to people, I said, well, if my kid was in sports, if he was playing lacrosse or whatever, I'd get to every game. So he's got a run of a week. I'm going to go to everything I can go to. So I can make that effort to do that. And it was the same with Nick. Nick tried soccer freshman year, and I went, and it was COVID, and it was like a weird kind of schedule kind of thing. And I tried to just get to as much as I could, go to practices if I could, or just to be present. And then he got involved in theater, and then they were singing in concerts, and and I would just go, and then it was just what our life became. Any parent of high school kids or even grammar school kids or middle school kids who are involved in activities, you're shuttling them around. Just happened to be that I didn't have to go very far for all these activities a lot of times.
That's got to be comforting as a parent, right, Elliott, to be able to know that your kids are so close by and to be able to go and see them do these things that they love so easily must have been.
Yeah, my wife, JP, my wife was very jealous a lot of times.
I was gonna ask that.
I was here, She would watch it on video, like we live stream stuff or, whatever. Yeah. But like I got to be present for all of these moments, and I felt, I did not want to take that for granted. And I look back on it now because this is the first year in the last 7 years that this year, I haven't had either of them in the car with me. Neither one of them got their license. So basically they relied on us to get them back and forth, or friends or whatever. But they were in the car with me going to school, coming back from school. So that was a little bit of an adjustment earlier in the year, to say the least. But it's just, I look back on it now very fondly and with a lot of feelings of blessing and gratitude for those moments, and just feeling like I played a big role in their high school careers. I was on stage when they received their diploma and gave them a hug. After they got the diploma from our president, I was right there because I was given the benediction at the end, and I would just go, or that final blessing, and I would just go up and hug them, and to have that moment too, to share that moment with them on that stage was pretty powerful, and may be able to share that same moment with him when he graduates from Fordham. Since I'm an alum, I get to be on the presidential dais with him when during his graduation. So these are things that I don't want to shrug them off. These are just really powerful moments, and really God incidences, and I just really believe that this is what God wanted for us. This is what God had intended for us. And again, I go back to that cannonball moment that I mentioned earlier about when my dad passed away. And as much as I miss him and loved him and I'm grateful for all the lessons he taught me, my life is gone in a direction that I would not change anything in my life at this point. There's no way I would change anything in my life. Just given what I have right now, my family, my friends, my career, my ministry, I would never change. I would never change a thing.
I have a random burning question for you, Elliott. Does your son's singing prowess come from?
Oh my goodness! Yeah, you should
sing.
Gretchen,
Hidden talent. I didn't know.
I'm going to give you Morris. I'm going to give you my wife's phone number. Okay,
we barely like to hear Elliott talk. Will we try to get him to stop talking? Imagine if he started singing, it would be even worse.
He likes to during mass, people will be singing and at least trying to hit the notes that the cantor's going. My dad likes just like a dull low note through everything.
Hey, St. Augustine says when you sing, you pray twice. Come on, let's go.
Well, I don't know if we can talk a little bit about the article you wrote about Field of Dreams for American Magazine. So I was reading that before the podcast, and I loved it. So I really enjoyed the article. I love the movie for one. I also think it's great that we get to talk a little bit about Iowa, considering where the colloquium is going to be in the summer. So to have that conversation about Iowa is great too. But what
Nebraska's not too far. Nebraska's not too far.
True. What about the article? What inspired you to write that article about Field of Dreams? I know you talk a little bit about the movie, but was there something that kind of hit? Because it's not like it's a recent piece of media, right? You're talking about something older. So for that to come up and be the choice for you to write about that movie, what brought that thought on?
Yeah, totally. I think it's a couple of things. I mean, I'm really where my cinematic loves kind of fall is a lot of stuff like 1995 and before. Like that's just sort of the niche of movies that I particularly enjoy. So when I got to America, I knew I wanted to write about at least for that short summer period. I wanted to write about at least one of the movies that I loved. And that movie Retreat that I led my senior year that I mentioned a little before, you sort of picked a movie and tied it to a week of the spiritual exercises. So I had taken Field of Dreams, and I'm really forgetting right now what week. Maybe my dad can remind me of what week I had tied it to.
Tied it to week 2 and the idea of the call.
Right. Week 2 and of course, which makes sense if you've seen the movie and the call that sort of Ray takes during it. So I'd written a retreat talk about it, and I sort of had some more burning ideas and thought it was kind of a cool overlap. Like there's not too many movies where you have this spiritual voice sort of call out to someone. At least not too many movies where it's not overdone or cheesy, I would say, in some capacity. For sure. And I think Field of Dreams, I really recommend. There's a book that one of the actors, Dwyer Brown, who actually plays Ray's dad, which is a bit of a spoiler, wrote. And I read that book, and that book was pretty inspiring to me. And I was thinking about sort of the book, I was thinking about my retreat talk, I was thinking about the movie. And there's there's also, and this is sort of, it's kind of arbitrary to talk about, but it's interesting. They have this behind the scenes like featurette where the cast and crew are just talking about all the various things that like went right and like sort of snapped into place to make the movie happen. And I watched that featurette after the last time I had watched the movie before I went to work at America. So and during that featurette, they're like, this movie would not have happened if this random thing did not fall into place, or if these people hadn't decided to get involved and things like that. And it just felt like there was so much serendipity and so much like that happened to make the movie occur, and so much like that sort of came out of the movie where like the actors still talk about it as one of their favorite filming experiences today. And I'm like, this is a special movie. Let me take some time to examine it and see, since I wrote that talk and gave that talk like 4 years ago, where has my mindset changed, but where can I sort of expand on things now? And I sort of rewatched it. I thought about it a lot, and I pitched the article sort of with the idea that I had already written this talk, and I sort of wanted to expand on it, and I felt like it could be a cool topic to discuss. And then that summer, just it happened to be, I think it was the movie's, it's coming up on its 40th anniversary, and then also America had just interviewed Kevin Costner too, so it was just sort of like,
Yeah.
again, serendipitous timing where I got in, I had this idea, and it was kind of like the perfect time to put out another article about Kevin Costner, and I just was kind of like, I got to snatch up this opportunity while it's here.
Mm.
So I think like in a very like logistical sense, I just like was very inspired by the film. And then obviously I think it was one of the, like the first like PG-13 movies that my dad had showed me as a kid. Um, and I really remember it because of the emotional reaction that it got from my dad at the time. And that's not to say my dad's not emotional or anything, but I don't think I had seen a movie move him to tears
Mm.
until that movie. And at the time, I didn't really understand or 100% get that because I was young at the time. But I think over the years, I understand that. I think my dad's story of his dad passing away, I think really sort of, I'll have my dad speak to it in a minute, but I think the ending of the film and sort of that last moment that Ray gets with his father is such a special moment. And I'm sure that that's a moment that my dad would love to take if he had the opportunity. And again, I'll stop speaking for him now. But I just thought that there were some interesting parallels to my family's life. But I also thought that there were just some incredibly impactful moments in the film between a father and a son. And Ray's dad doesn't appear until the last like 5 minutes of the movie, but I still think that throughout the film you get to see that their relationship grow and sort of change, even though his dad's absent from a lot of it. And I just wanted to sort of capture that sort of theme of the film and sort of expand on it with my own relationship. I like to write about movies, and I like to think about movies that sort of have some sort of parallel to myself. And I just thought that there were so many like this feel, and to just like paralleling the serendipity it took to make the film. I felt like there was serendipity in the film and myself. Again, not the most concise answer, but I do love this movie. I have a lot of thought on it, so yeah.
It's the article itself is beautiful. Even you talking about, the relationship with your father. Not that obviously you have a close relationship with your father, which is a little bit different than what you hear about in the movie. But even the two of you talking about trying to connect with your grandfather and with Elliott's father, and how you guys still try to honor some of those traditions and make sure that you keep that alive in your family's current tradition and current history. I think that's such an important thing for people to hear. And I think it ties so closely to a lot of the things we talk about at Jesuit institutions, about the importance of family and also the importance of tradition, and why we don't forget people and what they have brought to our lives, even if they're not physically present anymore, how much of an impact they can have on us and our institution. So I thought the article in itself so perfectly covered some of that respect that Jesuit institutions have for tradition and the people who have come before them. I really thought you hit that so well in the article.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I'd love not to sidetrack, but I'd love to just get my dad's thoughts on like
Yeah.
sort of what I was
Yeah,
mentioning
definitely.
too. Just like I think he could probably speak to it a little more eloquently than I could.
No, I mean, I think for me, it's probably, top two movies that I love that I can watch over and over again. And I do remember showing, the boys, my boys that film, when they were younger and maybe not really fully realizing it. And then, yeah, that last scene kind of gets to me just because I think back to when my dad was sick at the end and he was in the hospital. And basically the last conversation I had with him, was over my grades. I was, it was semester, first semester freshman year at Iona, didn't do great, and he was really upset, especially about math and science since he was a cardiologist, and my math and science grades weren't that great. And I just think about the film, and the line is, "I could never respect someone whose hero was a criminal." And he talks about Shoeless Joe being a criminal because he took the bribe with the Chicago Black Sox scandal. And the last thing I said to my dad was basically an argument, so it wasn't the exact same thing, but it was like this idea that like, hey, the last memory of my dad or the last thing that my dad thought about with me was my poor grades. Or so that was things that I just, when you see that last scene and that interaction with them, and he says, "You want to have a catch?" It could have been just like, "Can I apologize?" Or, it was like this way of forgiving each other. What does that look like? And this was something I talked to my spiritual director about when I was at Fordham, and he told me to write a letter. And I was like, "You're crazy. My dad's been dead." He goes, "No, write a letter and bury it at his grave."
Mm.
And so that's what I did. I wrote a letter and I buried it at the grave. I went back a month or two after I had buried it, and it was gone. It wasn't dug out. It was no longer there. It just, those moments and those things, and then to see Will's reaction to it, and then for him to use it during that retreat. He worked with our head of guidance here, John Hanrahan, who's also a spiritual director. And actually, John, I was telling this to Will last night when I picked him up at Fordham. I said, "Mr. Hanrahan's used that. He's used parts of what you wrote." So Will's writing is still impacting. We're all kind of wrapped up in it, and we all kind of understand it. John lost his dad under, it's like all this stuff, we can connect with it in so many ways, and we can remember. The memory is really what's so important. And JP, what you said was beautiful. Like the tradition at our schools, we cannot forget about the history and the people that have impacted us. And we need to recall, right? We need to recall, because then we grow and we become better because of that.
Two things stick out to me about this part of the conversation. One is thinking of mentors and guides that I've lost in the last few years, how I still kind of have conversations with them every once in a while,
Sure.
And that fact that it's not just a conversation into thin air, but there is that kind of reciprocity happening, whether I can see it or not. And the second thing that sticks out to me is when you said that this was a movie as a part of a retreat and that you wrote a talk on the second week in the call. So remembering that part of the movie that is about answering the call, no matter how ridiculous the
Right.
circumstances may seem.
Yeah, plow under your
matter
crop.
how many,
what's a crop? What's a crop?
no matter how many people are telling you that that's
nuts.
ridiculous, you
You're
shouldn't
nuts.
do it. And then the last interesting thing it reminds me of, because I'm directing someone in the spiritual exercises right now that wanted an audio book of the Bible, and I discovered James Earl Jones has read the Bible, and I'm like, I might have to get myself a copy of that, because as you said, Will, that's like the voice in your head that doesn't sound cheesy, right? He can always be the voice in my head that really
James Earl Jones is
has
the
us being
perfect
sweet.
voice for anything, and certainly
Yeah, right.
the voice of God is a good one for James Earl Jones.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
He gives that long speech at the end of the movie that's like so iconic now, but like just like thinking about anyone else delivering it, like you just can't picture it like ending up in the same like space and culture as it has become without his voice behind it. It's just so incredible.
So I know that we're coming to the end of our time and we could carry this conversation forever. There's so much more for
I
us to
want
talk
to.
about. And I know, Will, you're carrying on at America, right? You still have some time there, so we'll hear some more from you through American
Y-
Media.
Yeah, so I got their O'Hare Fellowship. So it actually I'm currently not there, but I will be starting up again in August. So you'll hear from me, I guess from August 2025 to June 2026. That's when I'll be there. So
Great. That's great.
Wonderful. And it's clear that you will take every advantage of that opportunity as you did even with the internship earlier. So we're really glad we got you on the podcast before you become even more famous and don't have time for us.
I'm Will Gualtiere's dad. It's not the other way around. So there you
Yeah.
go.
Hey, it happens to all of us, Elliott.
Yeah.
But we do, and Elliott, I hope you have a couple minutes because we do have a couple
Yeah.
closing questions that we
Yep.
usually ask. One from me and one from JP. So mine is kind of, could be silly, could be serious, but if you could go back to 1540 and talk to Ignatius directly, what is one question that you would ask him?
well, I could give my joke answer that I said to my dad last night, just for a little bit of levity. So I think the funniest question to ask him would be to go back and ask him what he thinks of the Iggy nickname that's kind of become prolific, and see if he'd prefer a different nickname. Would he prefer something aside from Iggy as a nickname, or would he embrace it? I think that'd be my question.
Or the cartoon drawing of him that usually accompanies
Yeah.
it.
Right,
So.
exactly. Which
Or
somehow
does
every
he
Jesuit school
does he
has.
like the bobblehead? I have a bobblehead. I have an Iggy bobblehead. It says
Nice.
Iggy and it's a bobblehead, and you can just tap his head. And I got it as a gift from Loyola Press. So that would be kind of cool. I don't know. Did he ever think he would have a bobblehead made of him? That would be kind of funny.
I mean,
Yeah,
you know
and
you've
also,
arrived if you have a
Yeah, that's
bobblehead.
true.
I do not have
Yeah.
one, but you know you've arrived. So
yeah.
Yeah.
But I was actually gonna. Yeah, I was like, oh, maybe we'll ask a little bit more of a serious question. I said, I would love to have known, like, what was it like to really lay down your sword? You're at Montserrat, you're in that, like, what he spent the whole night there, and then, like, what is he thinking? Really, what is he thinking there? Was he even thinking that, his legacy would be this many centuries later, and it's still going and still going very, very strong.
I think you probably already answered a little bit of what I was going to ask you, Elliot, just in terms of when was there a moment that it was so clear to you that you could no longer deny that call to working in Jesuit education? Was you spoke a little bit about that cannonball moment, but would that be it for you? Is it still
No, I
that?
mean, I think JP, like, it was certainly, that was a moment to kind of, my trajectory in life changed, but it's not denying the voice. It's not denying that call. We can go back to Field of Dreams again, right? And when I told people I was going to be doing this, like doing ministry, they were like, what is that? This is 30 years ago. And, like, it's a little more part of the vernacular, so to speak, right now, but it's really just not denying what God, what is God's desire for me and what is my desire for myself, and are they in line? And so I knew, probably looking back, like, just being on those early retreats, like, I look back and it might not be a singular moment, but it's a moment where I cannot deny what God is asking of me.
Yeah, I think you covered that so beautifully before, Elliot, too, just to say you wouldn't change anything, right? You
Right.
just wouldn't change anything. And, to be able to share that and look at what you've been able to accomplish, raising well and just growing your family in general.
Yeah.
I think you answered that call so beautifully. And then to be able to see the fruits of that in your children, that's such a beautiful, beautiful story and a beautiful thing to be able to live and see every single day.
Yeah.
And Will, I know you're still in the middle of discovering what is coming in your future, but how do you kind of navigate where God's calling you right now?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to my dad about this a little bit last night, and just like the Jesuits really rope you in. Like I don't think that I'd believe you 4 years ago if they were like, oh, you'll be working with big Jesuit publication post grad, and like like I'll be going on 9 years with working with the Jesuits at that point. So I feel like I have to sit back and listen. I if there's one thing that I've learned, it's when I've tried to push things in a different direction, it sort of snaps back to whatever path God is pushing me on. And it might not be a path that I can recognize currently, but I'm sort of just trying to kind of learn to take that step and that breath back and sort of embrace it. I mean, I wasn't sure if I'd get this fellowship because it's competitive and prestigious, and I was like looking at backups, but I guess God wants me there, so I'm sort of again just I don't know. I feel like I have to a little bit, obviously like do my best wherever I'm sent, but sort of allow myself to be sent because when I was first looking at college, like I wasn't thinking about Fordham, and I ended up at Fordham. When I was thinking about high school, my at the beginning of my second year of middle school, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to go to Fairfield Prep. I want to stay with my friends in my hometown. But I've sort of, I feel like God has pushed me in a certain direction for a certain reason, and I'm just sort of on that roller coaster a little bit where I can, maybe interact with it a little and put my best foot forward at each stop, but sort of I'm on tracks that God has set for me a little bit. I'm just I'm at the beginning of these things, so hopefully I'm waiting for the next station still a little bit, you know.
Great. Thank you guys so much, both of you. I'm sure this won't be the last time that we talk with either of you, but thank you for being on the podcast and for inviting our listeners into this experience. I know it will resonate with a lot of Ignatian educators in a variety of ways. So thank you very much.
Well,
Thank
thank
you
you
guys.
both. Always good to be amongst good friends, and thanks so much for having us. I think this has been great.
Thank you guys.
Have a good one. Take care, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
That was a great conversation, JP. I
No,
really enjoyed every minute of that.
Yeah, it was nice to actually have a different conversation with the four people discussing and having them talk a little bit about what's going on in their lives is really good. It was a really good conversation. We don't get that. It's usually us talking to an individual, but to have them get to talk a little bit about their dynamic and share together with us, that was great. I really loved that. And again, we said this before. Elliott was positive and willing to share and open, and you can see the impact that that's had on his family. Will was very much the same, just an open book, and what a bright kid to be able to talk a little bit about what he's written, but then also to share a lot about his experiences at Fairfield and in leading retreats. Right, Will is the perfect example of what Jesuit institutions are trying to create. Someone who was trying to find his own way, struggled a little bit through that at the start, finding the things that were for him. What were his gifts? What was it that God was calling him to? And then to see him flourish once he found those paths that were for him. I think first of all, if you're Elliott and you're a parent, that's always what you want for your child, to find that path. But then to also recognize that it's not just something he likes, but he feels it's what God is calling him to. That I think that is the ultimate success story for schools, because it's not really about financial success or these great jobs. That's not what Will ever talked about. He talked about the things that he was being called to, and I think that if we can get teenagers and our alumni to see that as the true goal of their time in our institutions, then we should be considering ourselves successful.
Yeah, this summer we talked, both you and I, but also with other colleagues from around the world, about this challenge of getting our students to engage with who God is calling them to be in a world where success and fame and all of those things are kind of constantly bombarding them.
Yeah.
And we talked about the real fear that we might not, if we interviewed all of alumni from various schools, get the response that God was a part of it or spirituality was a part of their formation, that other things that were really exciting about their school experience would come up, but we would want to hear, did we make a difference in that spiritual formation? And so I think Elliott and Will are a good example of that. Of course, Elliott is at home with Will, during his formation as well as
It
at
helps
school.
having that, doesn't it?
Yeah, and he's in charge of that spiritual life at Fairfield Prep. But it was just refreshing to hear, like, when intentional formation is done, what are the products of that? And it really is a student that a young man that is interested in saying, where is God leading me? Where can I say yes? And whether that's leads me to success or not is not the point.
Absolutely. That was great. I really enjoyed it, and looking forward now to seeing what Will puts out through American Magazine moving forward, because as we talked about the Field of Dreams article, which I implore people to go and take a look at. It's really nice. Maybe we can put a link to that in the notes for the podcast, just because it's such a nice article, and Will, as I said, perfectly captures the concept of tradition and history and why it's important to remain connected to the people in our lives in the past, even if you don't know them perfectly or at all, but to be able to keep their spirit alive and the good things that they did. I think that's such a great thing to hear, and for people to be able to read that would be wonderful.
Yeah, now I really want to go back and watch Field of Dreams again.
Yeah,
But
I have to watch it.
I also hope that Siri has an option for James Earl Jones being the voice, because that would be,
Yeah.
they think I'm talking. Siri popped up. I was talking to it. Graces and challenges. Is that what we usually do?
Yeah.
Graces and yeah.
Yeah, we spoke a little bit about this before, but I said again, the grace for the last little while for me is the last 2 weeks, especially this last couple of days, is just time with my daughters. And as I said, probably the most memorable experience of the week was that time with the 3-year-olds at the preschool, which was something else. Just to see that it is a reminder though of why you want to work with kids. Yes, we work with teenagers, and it's a different experience for sure, but why it's always worthwhile investing in young people, even at that age, because it may seem like, oh, it's childcare. It's not childcare. It's the investment that people put into your kids, the time that they spend with your children, whatever they're teaching them, whether it's routines or just what it is to be independent and take care of themselves. It's a grace. I was kind of blown away by those by the teachers at the preschool, and how much they are able to teach 3 and 4-year-olds and how to get through the day. That base is so important. We talked about this oftentimes when we were in Indonesia, and talking with schools, speaking with people from schools around the world. We often talk about foundations. And we probably think of foundations, as kids, probably 8, 9, 10. No, the foundations start early. Every single step in their life is so important, and teaching them independence and skills that allow them to get through their days. We forget some of those things sometimes, how important they are. So for me, it was a grace to see the teachers, and just to spend time with those young, enthusiastic kids who were loving every moment of life, whether it was playing out in the snow or sitting together and doing imaginary play. You're like, yeah, this is a worthwhile thing to do today.
Yeah, I think I have a grace forthcoming. I am going to volunteer to serve pizza at my kids' school in about an hour. And I normally do not get to volunteer. I wish I did, because I would really love to give back to the school that has done so much for my kids. So it won't be as exciting as 3-year-olds. I think I'm in the middle school to high school lunch periods,
Okay.
but
It all matters. It all counts.
Yeah, and I think my middle schooler might grudgingly acknowledge my existence when he comes up to get pizza. We'll see. But one of the graces that I had this week was I took one of my 10-year-olds for an ADHD evaluation, and we were talking about how busy his mind is. And he just said to the doctor, I just want to know everything about everything. And it was the greatest sentence to hear out of his mouth, because he really does. He like dissects everything, like he talks a lot because he's going through the process that's going through his head and then putting it out there. But he's just interested in everything and how it works. And it was just a grace both to see his excitement for learning and to know that in 2025, I'm a parent who knows what he needs in order to do that, in order to know everything about everything and be successful. And so it was a grace of knowing that I could provide this for him and help him in this way, that I can help all of my children that have learning differences. But it's also a challenge too, because I think we are struggling as a society to really understand different ways of learning. And in Catholic schools, traditionally, we haven't always been able to provide for learning differences and different ways of learning, even though we're getting better in some instances. And so it was both a grace to be like, oh, my son is thriving and I am able to help him do so, and a challenge to think that might not be true for every child, and a challenge to think how can I continue to help that process? How can we all continue to help that process of getting every child what they need in order to learn and know everything about everything?
Yeah, it's an area of growth, I think, for lots of schools, right? The shift from being teacher-centered to student-centered. And I think places are all well-meaning. I don't think any school ever intends to not provide that, but it's still a challenge on a daily basis for schools to be able to give each individual student what they need, especially when you consider the vast differences in learning and neurodiversity and different learning challenges. It's such a difficult thing to do. So, yeah, that's an area of growth for schools. Any school is still working on that. Some are better than others, but you see young people struggling. You want to make sure they're getting the best opportunity they can, put them in a position to be successful and to learn. So yes, I think that's something we need to continue to remind ourselves of when we're working in our schools.
Well, and I don't think as a teacher, before I had kids in my house who had learning differences and hearing loss and all those things, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
Right. And so the more opportunities we have to get to know people who are different than us, people who learn different than us, the better.
Agreed. Why it's so important for us as well to put our students and our teachers in places where they encounter people in different places of their lives. Whether they're on the margins or whether they're just people who are different than the way we are. It greatly impacts the way we act moving forward when you can form relationships with people that are different than you. So I agree. Same for me. I definitely didn't understand what it was like to have to deal with families and students and where they were coming from until I started dealing with it myself. And I think there's no shame in that. I think for all of us, there's no shame in understanding that it sometimes takes really difficult, painful experiences to be able to learn how to do things better. That's okay.
That's why empathy is so important. It
Mm.
gives you an opportunity to enter into the shoes of another person, and it
Yes.
really changes how you make decisions and how you engage with the world.
Yeah, agreed.
Any grace desired for the upcoming week as we both go back to school in a few days?
The grace desired for the next week is survival. Like once you go back after a couple of weeks, it's getting everybody back into the routine. It's am I going to survive this readjustment to routine? Although I'm a fan of routine. It helps. It helps me. I'm more successful in that. But I know it's always hard to go back after a break for everybody involved. So the grace for me is just that first of all, everybody comes back safely and well. That's number one. A lot of people traveling and returning to the country and things like that. Hope that they get back safely, and then, like I said, the grace of survival for the next couple of days. That's what I'm asking for.
Yeah, I appreciate that, though I will be the only one at work next week. So my kids will be home. So I get to go to work early and get, some things
Okay.
done, which is
Nothing wrong
great.
with that.
I think I am praying for the grace of hope, not only seeing the hope alive around me, but also being a instrument of hope for other people as well, to be able to kind of lean from a positive stance about each situation I enter into, and really learn from people like, Elliott, who we interviewed, that often does that innately.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, JP, look at us. In the last couple weeks, we have had 2 interviews. If I
Yep,
get this
pretty
published
good.
in the next couple times, so we're on a roll.
We're
gonna get
improving.
there.
This has been
We're
good for us.
improving.
Yeah, it's been good.
Stay with us. We will get there. All right. Well, until next time. Thank you for joining us today for our conversation. If you like this podcast and would like to hear more or help others find it, please subscribe and leave a review. To follow along and contribute to the conversation, as well as engage with the other resources offered, follow Living Ad Maiorem on Instagram and bookmark the website livingadmaiorem.org. Both links are in the show notes. This podcast and associated website are an offering of the Jesuit Schools Network and are supported by passionate educators throughout North America. So until next time, remember that your work living towards the greater matters. After all, it is how others see God alive in you.